A Nightmare on Elm Street, Suffer the Children, an original novel by David Bishop. Chapter 3. Chris was running laps around the baseball diamond when he heard a strangled cry for help beneath the bleachers. A heavy-set figure was looming over another person cowering in the shadows. "Ain't nobody gonna help you now, you little shit." The surly voice was unmistakably Joey Johnston. Chris had crossed paths with him before and decided the bully had more muscles than brains. "Please, I just need more time." "I ain't got time. I needed those answers today." The sound of fist on flesh was followed by a cry of pain. Chris stopped running. He shouldn't get involved and should keep going, but he couldn't. Johnston used intimidation to get what he wanted from other students. Those he couldn't frighten, he avoided, like Chris, but most were easy pickings. Johnston was in no danger of graduating any time soon, but he had enough animal cunning to do his dirty work out of the faculty's sight. Normally he had 3 loyal goons to help enforce his own regime, but they must be busy elsewhere. Johnston was flying solo for once. Good, Chris decided. He needs to be taught a lesson. Chris jogged around the bleachers and approached the 2 students. Johnston's latest victim was on the ground, blood streaming from both nostrils, hands groping across the dirt in search of something. Chris recalled seeing the kid in class but couldn't remember his name. Was it Paul? Patrick? Johnston was enjoying himself, a cruel smile on his fleshy face that was framed by blonde hair shaved close to the scalp. He was about to crush the other kid's glasses beneath his boots. "This is what happens when you disappoint me, Peter." "Hey!" Chris shouted, startling Johnston. "Leave him alone!" The thug sneered at the new arrival. "You gonna make me, boy?" Chris felt his anger rising at the implied racial slur. "I ain't your boy and I ain't your friend, Johnston. Leave him be." "You gonna make me?" "If I have to, then yes." Johnston smiled cockily. "You and whose army?" "I don't need an army for the likes of you. 1-on-1, let's see how big a man you are without 3 goons to back you up." Johnston's eyes narrowed. "You get in a fight? What's that gonna do for your chances of playing in the big game, boy? Coach will drop you like a stone if he thinks you're a discipline case." Chris knew Johnston was right, but stood his ground. "Bring it on. If you think you can take me single-handed, then let's see you do it." "Hey, what's going on under there?" Coach was marching towards the bleachers. He might be pushing 50, but Springwood High's head of sports was all muscle and grit, the sun gleaming on his bald, bronzed head. "Harris, I said I wanted 80 laps from you. I don't see you running." Johnston smiled. "Speak of the devil." He noticed Peter trying to retrieve his glasses. Johnston slammed his foot down, crushing them under his boots, all the while smirking at Chris standing opposite. "Go on, take a swing at me now, boy. Show me what you got." Chris stepped towards him. "Later, when we don't have an audience." Peter had found the shattered frames. "You broke my glasses." Johnston laughed. "Poor baby. Maybe we can get you a seeing eye dog now." Peter punched his right hand into Johnston's crotch. The bully crumpled to the ground, a strangulated cry gasping from his lips. Peter leaned over the whimpering figure. "Maybe we should get you a seeing eye dick, asshole." "Hey, what the hell's going on here?" Coach demanded. He came around the back of the bleachers in time to see Johnston attacked, but missed what provoked the incident. Peter briefly explained what had occurred, and Chris backed him up. Coach crouched beside Johnston, who was still recovering in the dirt. "Well, is that what happened?" "Harris is lying, Coach. I was helping Peter find his glasses, but I accidentally stood on them. Harris goaded Peter into hitting me." Chris tried to protest, but Coach had heard enough. "Fighting amongst students is not acceptable behavior at Springwood High, unless it's inside a boxing ring. Oh, Mahoney, I'm putting you down for detention." "But what about my glasses?" "Johnston here will buy you a new pair, won't you?" "Yes, sir." "Now can you stand, Johnston? We better get you to the infirmary. See if there's another hurt worse than your pride." "I can make it on my own 2 feet, Johnston announced. "All right, then, get going," Coach replied. "I want to talk to Harris." Johnston nodded. As he walked past Chris, the blond youth hissed quietly out the side of his mouth. "I'll deal with you later, darky." Chris lashed out, smashing a fist into Johnston's face. The nose broke with an audible crack, and Johnston collapsed to the dirt once more, crying out in agony. Coach jumped between the 2 teenagers to stop Chris continuing his attack. "That's enough, Harris. Go to my office." "But he called me." I don't care what he called you. There is no justification for that sort of behavior in my school. But he... I said go to my office now. Chris unclenched his fist, but his face was still full of rage. Johnston blew him a kiss from behind Coach's back. Chris swore under his breath before stomping away, furious about letting Johnston get the better of him. Coach waved Peter away. You get out of here too, O'Mahony. You're in enough trouble as it is. Peter collected the remnants of his glasses and then hurried after Chris, squinting to avoid running into the bleachers' support beams. Hey, wait up! I can't, Chris snarled. You heard what Coach said. Yeah, but I wanted to thank you. For what? Chris demanded. Stepping in, helping me with Johnston. Most people are afraid of him, but you weren't. I just got myself thrown off the basketball team for helping you, Chris cut in. I can kiss goodbye to my college scholarship, too. All because I decided to do a good deed. I should have known better, for Christ's sake. Peter stopped following Chris. I'm sorry, I didn't realize... Lot of good that's going to do me, Chris marched on, determined not to let Peter see the tears of anger and frustration welling up in his eyes. Just stay the hell away from me, you got that? Peter nodded sadly. Yeah, I got it. Detention at Springwood High was a common occurrence for some students, and an unpleasant new experience for others. Once classes were dismissed for the day, anyone given attention was expected to report to the library within 20 minutes. The rules were simple. No talking, no movement, no cell phones or electronic devices, no books, no pens, no pencils, no paper, and no sleeping. Students had to sit in the center of the library and do nothing for 2 hours. The purpose was to make the punishment so boring that the students would make sure they would never have to attend detention again. For the most part, this policy succeeded. But for serial offenders like Lloyd Reeves, detention wasn't a waste of time. It was a valuable business opportunity to connect with new customers. Lloyd had been held back twice in junior high, thanks to an early introduction to regular drug consumption. Most of his contemporaries only sampled the demon weed upon arriving at Springwood High. Lloyd became a blow monkey at the age of 10, after stealing a joint from his elder brother Beau's secret stash. Lloyd thought it was a normal cigarette until he started to inhale. Within a few minutes, the G.I. Joe soldiers on the wallpaper in his bedroom came to life and were parading around the bed. After that little episode, Lloyd spent the next 3 years bugging Beau for another sample of nature's finest. He tried most other drugs. Mushrooms were another big hit, if you could pick them without being caught by the pigs, but grass was still his favorite. Something about the whole ritual of rolling the joint, getting those babies good and tight so they burned just right, man, it was an art form. If they gave him a grade for that, Lloyd would have graduated years ago with honors. Obviously, it had been a bummer when Beau got caught trying to sell a 1/4 ounce to an undercover cop. Beau's plea that he was looking after the lead for a friend, man, had cut little ice with the presiding judge at this trial. But there was an upside for Lloyd, who liked to think of himself as a guy who thought the glass half full kind of dude. The harsh sentence left Lloyd to look after the crop growing in their grandparents' basement. Beau had built a homemade hydroponics growing operation there, complete with computer-controlled nutrient flows and ultraviolet lights to keep the plants growing good and strong. Explaining to his grandparents about all the tinfoil covering the windows and doors hadn't been easy, until Lloyd had a brainwave. It's a science project, Gramps. Yeah, I'm growing these for school. It's awesome. Once they're just right, I harvest the results and present them to my fellow students. We all get to benefit from the wonders of, modern technology. I wouldn't be surprised if I aced science as a result. Maybe business studies, too. Lloyd was rather too fond of sampling the merchandise, but that didn't stop him turning a profit from dealing Springwood's finest weed. No matter what the weather, Lloyd always wore a big knitted cap hat to school. Challenged to explain his headgear by his peers, Lloyd had been blessed with another of his brainwaves. Inspired by the life and music of Bob Marley, that hero to potheads everywhere, Lloyd announced he had converted to the Rastafarian religion and would be growing his hair into dreadlocks. Hey, it saved him having to wash his shoulder-length mop of sandy brown hair and meant nobody wanted to look inside his hat. Genius, man. Total genius. When the final bell of the day announced it was time to go home, Lloyd grinned like an idiot. Excellent. Wander along to the library, set up shop, and Lloyd Reeves' Emporium of Dubious Delights was open for business. What was today, Thursday? Even better. No detention on Friday, so this was the last chance for students to pick up a little something for the weekend. Lloyd shuffled out of his last class of the day, the frayed ends of his flared jeans dragging along the floor behind him. Time to spread a little happiness. Alex made sure she was first at the library. It was a large, open-plan space, split over 2 floors at the northern end of the school. The ground floor held all the fiction, reference volumes, catalogs, and library administration. This was grouped around the outer walls, leaving the central area free for tables and chairs where students could sit and read. Above this was a vast tinted glass ceiling, allowing natural light to spill in without damaging the books. The upper level was reserved for office space, non-fiction, and computers for surfing the internet. The terminals were to be used solely as reference tools, but most students found a way to override the censorship firewalls. Twice, Principal Shea had threatened to remove the computers altogether, unless irresponsible elements among the student population stopped downloading and installing pornographic screensavers. But everyone knew the school was required by state legislation to have computers available, so his threat carried little weight. Alex pushed open the double doors and wandered into the library. The familiar smells and sensations washed over her: dust, despair, and boredom. A lack of ventilation preserved the dry and stuffy atmosphere, underlining the fact this was a place for learning, not for fun. Anyone still had delusions about its purpose need only meet the chief librarian, Miss Mortimer, a rotund, humorless woman in her 50s. She treated the library as her domain and everyone who ventured inside as a troublemaker, intent on disrupting her schedule. The library would run so much more smoothly and efficiently if nobody ever tried to borrow a book. Alex realized by the look on the middle-aged woman's face that the decision to hold detention in the library did not particularly please Mrs. Mortimer. Slab-faced and sour of look, she was stomping about the central area, brusquely pushing chairs back into their appointed positions. Mrs. Mortimer noticed Alex's arrival and scowled. "I suppose you're here for detention." "Well, I didn't come to take out a book," Alex replied, trying to raise a smile. It was a wasted effort since Mrs. Mortimer took the comment seriously. "I should hope not. The facility is closed to students after hours unless they have a written exemption from the principal." "Right." Alex gestured towards the cluster of tables and chairs. "Where do you want me to sit?" "I don't want you to sit anywhere," Mrs. Mortimer snapped imperiously. "I would much prefer it if none of your kind ever darken the door of my library again. But since you are here first, you may choose whichever seat that you want." Alex decided on the chair furthest from the old battle axe and collapsed into it, dropping her bag on the table in front of her. "Bags on the floor, please." Alex shifted her bag before smiling insincerely at Mrs. Mortimer. "That's better. The other probate should be along presently, then I shall explain the rules." "I've been in detention before, you know." "That matters little to me. Once you are all assembled, I shall explain the rules. That is the required procedure, so that is what I shall do." "No skin off my chin," Alex muttered. Before the librarian could react, the double doors into the library swung open and Lloyd shuffled in, his jeans dragging across the carpet. "Hey, Mrs. M., how you doing?" "My name is Mrs. Mortimer Reeves, not Mrs. M. or any variant upon that." "Whatever you say, Mrs. M., whatever you say. I'm totally not here to cause any trouble. You're the boss." The librarian rolled her eyes and pointed at a chair. "Just sit, Reeves." He shuffled to the seat and sank into it, giving Mrs. Mortimer a wink. "Your wish is my command, Mrs. M. And hey, call me Lloyd. Everybody does. It's like my name and everything." Peter was next to arrive, hurrying through the doors out of breath. "Sorry, I was just having a discussion with some of the other students." Heavy steps could be heard, and then Johnston and his 3 cronies burst into the library. A white bandage adorned the bully's face, covering his nose but not hiding the black bruises developing under both eyes. "You can run, but you can't hide, you little Mr. Johnston, are you joining us for detention again today?" Mrs. Mortimer cut in. Johnston let go of Peter's shirt and backed away from the stern-faced librarian. "Mrs. Mortimer, I didn't see you there." "Plainly. Are you joining us?" She waved a hand towards Alex and Lloyd. Johnston shook his head. "Not today, maybe next week." He jerked a thumb towards the exit, motioning for his 3 minions to leave. Johnston spared a last message for Peter. "Hey, old Mahoney, catch you later, okay?" No sooner had he walked out than Kat marched in and took a seat with the others. Chris and Heather were last to arrive, both entering uncertainly. Mrs. Mortimer pointed them towards the chairs in the middle of the library, then began her list of rules and regulations for the next 2 hours, a well-rehearsed speech about silence, respect, and taking things seriously. Once satisfied they knew what to do in the event of a fire or other emergency, she retired to her office upstairs. The chief librarian paused on the stairs to deliver a final warning. If I hear one word out of you or see anything untoward happening down here, all of you will be back for a week's worth of detention from Monday. Mrs. Mortimer resumed her journey up the stairs, then paused again. Except for Mr. Reeves, who seems to be a permanent fixture here. I'm sure I'll see him again next week regardless of what happens in the next 2 hours. The 6 students watched Mrs. Mortimer depart, then sat and waited in silence for several minutes. Chris was first to speak, keeping his voice a whisper. So, what do we do now? Nothing, Kat replied dryly. That's the whole point. They think if they bore us shitless, we won't want to come back for more. Guess they haven't been to any of Mycroft's classes lately. I should be at training, Chris lamented. My dad's going to kill me if he finds out I've been in detention. Poor baby, Kat teased. This your first time in with the bad boys and girls? What'd you do, forget to bring Coach an apple before gym class? He punched Johnston in the face for me, Peter replied. Broke his nose, too. Dude, way to go, Lloyd said approvingly. I hit Johnston in the nuts, Peter added, but the others ignored him. No, it wasn't for him. He provoked me, Chris explained. I'm not proud of what I did. You should be, Heather chipped in. Johnston's been an asshole for years. It's about time somebody wiped that smug grin off his face. Kat folded her arms and glared at Heather. Who let the princess in here? What did you do, wear the wrong nail polish to pep rally? I had an accident, Heather snapped. It's none of your business. She totaled Principal Shea's car. Smashed it right up the ass. You should have seen the look on the Shea man's face, Lloyd cut in. It was an accident, Heather maintained before turning on Kat. What the hell are you in here for anyway? I'm not here for detention, Kat admitted. I came to get my supplies for the weekend. She extracted the stolen money from her rucksack and threw the crumpled notes to Lloyd. Now that's what I'm talking about, he said happily. After counting the cash, Lloyd removed his hat and extracted 3 baggies filled with dried greenery. I always wondered what you kept under there, Peter said. Lloyd smirked before tossing the bags across the table to Kat. Don't smoke it all at once. She smiled and nodded. Chris was horrified. You came to detention to do a drug deal? What, you think I'd come here otherwise? Kat asked. I don't know how you can play it all with that stick up your butt, Harris. Relax, you'll live longer. Only losers do drugs, Chris replied. Lloyd paused before putting his hat back on. Anybody else want to join us losers, or should I just close up the shop for today? Peter smiled triumphantly. It's in Johnston's underpants. Everybody looked at him quizzically. The dope, it's in Johnston's underpants, he repeated. Dude, I thought I was bad, Lloyd commented. But you're way further out there than me. Peter shook his head. No, I've just remembered what this is like. Remember the scene in that film? The one where they're all in detention and smoking dope in the library? Where they do the goofy dancing? Silence. It's a John Hughes film, an 80s teen classic, Peter persisted. A jock, a prom queen, a geek, a weirdo, and a troublemaker, all thrown together for the day in one place. Molly Ringwald, Emilio Estevez, Judd Nelson, Anthony Michael Hall. You must have seen it. Came out in 1985. Lloyd broke the silence that followed. Dude, we weren't even born in 1985. Anthony Michael Hall, isn't he the guy who sees visions on that TV show? Heather asked. Creepy. Forget him, Kat said before pointing at Alex. I want to hear from little Miss Quiet over there. She hasn't said a thing since we arrived. You must have cut English this morning, Lloyd said. She totally freaked in Mycroft's class, started shouting about how she wanted to fuck somebody. That wasn't what I said, Alex replied. Lloyd shrugged. That's what it sounded like to me. It was intense, really. Freddy. His name was Freddy, and I didn't want to fuck him. I was shouting fuck you at him, okay? Hey, I'm not arguing. I'm only trying to do a little business. Kat wasn't finished with Alex yet. I still want to know why you're here. What did you do to get sent to detention? Alex grimaced, embarrassed to admit the truth. Nothing. Nothing? Nobody gets stuck here with that old bitch Mortimer for nothing. Not even me, Kat said. I'm not in detention, Alex admitted. I just didn't want to go home. None of them spoke for a moment. I can understand that, Peter murmured. A few of the others exchanged knowing glances. Only Lloyd had something more to add. Man, you are bringing me down. People need to be cheering up, know what I'm saying? He smiled. I know just the thing to cure your ills, dudes. I told you before, I don't do drugs, Chris replied. Better than that, Lloyd said. How about a totally awesome field trip? What are you talking about? Heather asked. One of my brother's best buds, Luke, scored this gig working on clinic drug trials at the Kasha Institute for the Study of Sleep Disorders. You check in for the day, they stick a needle in your arm, and you check out with a pocket full of dead presidents. It's like the best deal ever, you know? What kind of drugs? Peter wondered. Luke says the latest badge is a new kind of anti-insomnia serum. Best sleep I've had in years. Just like awesome, Lloyd enthused. You've already done this? Yeah, last Friday. I ditched classes and got paid for sleeping all day. And the dream I had? Dude, better than any weed I've ever toked. Know what I mean, dude? Kat nodded. I'm up for that. When's the next session? Tomorrow. Registration's at like 10 in the morning. I'll see you there, Kat agreed. Who else is coming? Princess? Heather looked doubtful. I don't know. What about side effects? Lloyd smiled broadly. It's totally safe, you know. They couldn't test it on humans unless it was. I could use the money to get my car fixed, Heather realized. After a moment's thought, she grinned. I'm in. Excellent, Lloyd nodded happily. Anybody else? Basketball dude? The name's Chris, and I told you, I don't do drugs. This juice is strictly legit, man. Nothing to worry about. Nothing to worry yourself about at all. Still, Chris shook his head. I don't think this is for me. Peter rubbed his chin thoughtfully. I've always wanted to see a clinical trial in action. I'm considering whether or not to go into pharmaceutical research after getting my first degree. All right, we've got 4 on floor. Any more for any more? Lloyd turned to Alex. What about you? You look like you could use a good sleep, and getting paid at the same time can't be bad, you know. She looked at him suspiciously. Why are you so enthusiastic about this? You want a commission or something? Lloyd shrugged, a little shamefaced. I'll fess up. Luke gets a bonus for every volunteer he gets through the door, and he's splitting it with me. But that doesn't stop this being a good deal, you know. You'll probably be given a placebo, Peter added. At many clinical trials, only half the volunteers get the real drug. The rest are used as a control sample to compare effectiveness. I'll think about it, Alex conceded. Excellent, Lloyd enthused. Trust me, this is the easiest money you'll ever make. Flat on your back and dozing away the day. It's Buzz City, dudes. Okay, this has been Chapter 3 of A Nightmare on Elm Street, Suffer the Children. I'm sorry the video's been short today. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm feeling a little under the weather. I should be back and at it tomorrow with 2 to 3 chapters guaranteed. Until then, everybody have a great night, and thanks for joining me. Be sure to subscribe, hit that like button, drop me a comment, and click the bell so you're notified of future chapters.